A quiet suburban neighborhood with carefully trimmed lawns and an active homeowners association often prided itself on maintaining order and appearances. In this setting lived Marcus, a reserved but successful middle-aged black man who had purchased his home nearly a decade earlier. He was known among a small circle of neighbors as polite, diligent, and respectful, though he often kept to himself, preferring to work on his motorcycle in the evenings or spend time with his sister and nephews. When they visited, his garage was his sanctuary, organized, spotless, and unmistakably his domain. For Marcus, it symbolized years of hard work and quiet independence. The neighborhood HOA, however, had a reputation for micromanaging. At the center of most complaints and disputes was Karen, a woman who styled herself as the unofficial enforcer of the community standards. She had a habit of confronting people over the smallest matters: mailboxes that needed repainting, trash cans left out too long, or cars parked slightly askew. Though she had no formal power beyond her HOA board seat, she behaved as though she were the sheriff of the block. Many neighbors tolerated her with rolled eyes, whispering about her intrusive ways. But Marcus had largely managed to avoid conflict with her. He nodded politely when she waved, but he had no desire to be drawn into her dramas. That uneasy peace collapsed one Saturday afternoon. Karen, frustrated that her own driveway was blocked temporarily by her husband's landscaping project, decided without asking to pull her SUV directly into Marcus's open garage. She justified it in her mind. His garage was empty at that moment. She only needed to park for a couple of hours. And she believed her standing on the HOA board gave her leeway. More. To her, Marcus's space was just another community resource, not his private property. With an air of entitlement, she left her vehicle there and went about her errands. When Marcus returned home later that day, he was stunned to find a stranger's vehicle occupying the very space he worked so hard to maintain. He immediately recognized it as Karen's car. His first reaction was disbelief. Why would anyone presume to use his garage? As he stood staring at the SUV, a mix of irritation and curiosity grew. He knocked on Karen's door, but no one answered. He waited for half an hour, growing more frustrated. Then a thought crossed his mind. His garage was equipped with a heavy roll-down security door and a digital lock system he had installed years earlier after a string of local break-ins. If Karen thought she could treat his property as her spare parking space, perhaps she needed a reminder of whose space it really was. Quietly, without fanfare, Marcus lowered the garage door, locked it, and went inside his house. From his window, he could see her vehicle, now completely inaccessible. Trapped inside hours later, Karen returned, groceries in hand, humming to herself only to find the garage door shut tight. At first, she thought she had parked in the wrong place, but then reality sank in. Her SUV was locked in someone else's garage. She banged on Marcus's door furiously. When he answered, calm and measured, she demanded that he release her car immediately. Her voice loud enough for nearby neighbors to hear. She accused him of being hostile, unreasonable, and even suggested he was creating a hostile environment in the community. Marcus listened without raising his tone. Then he explained that she had trespassed, parked in his garage without permission, and that, technically, he could call the police to report her. Karen, flustered, switched tactics. She tried to downplay her actions, saying it was just a harmless favor she did herself, that it wasn't a big deal and that he was overreacting. But Marcus refused to budge. He reminded her that property boundaries mattered, that respect between neighbors mattered, and that her position on the HOA board gave her no special rights over anyone else's home. His refusal to immediately open the garage left Karen pacing in frustration, realizing she had no control over the situation for once. Word of the standoff spread quickly through the neighborhood. Curious neighbors peeked from their blinds, some stepping onto their porches to watch. Many had their own grievances with Karen and secretly relished seeing her confronted. For years, she had nitpicked everyone else's behavior. Yet here she was, caught blatantly violating the very standards she claimed to uphold. Conversations buzzed quietly among the onlookers. If she could intrude on Marcus's property so easily, what else had she done? The incident began shifting the unspoken power dynamics on the street. Karen eventually tried to escalate the situation by threatening to call the police herself, claiming Marcus was holding her property hostage. But when the officers arrived, Marcus calmly explained what had happened, showing them his deed, garage security system, and even pointing out the HOA rules that emphasized respect for private property. The officers quickly saw that Karen had no legal ground to stand on. In fact, they warned her that she was lucky Marcus hadn't pressed trespassing charges. Embarrassed, Karen sputtered excuses but ultimately had to apologize reluctantly just to retrieve her car. The release of the SUV was not the end. However, it was the beginning of a broader reckoning. Neighbors who witnessed the scene began speaking more openly about Karen's overreach on the HOA board. Several organized to challenge her position, citing her misuse of authority and pattern of harassment. For Marcus, the incident became less about the inconvenience of his garage and more about drawing a line, showing that respect could not be demanded by force or entitlement, but only earned through decency and fairness. Over the following weeks, Karen's influence dwindled. She attended HOA meetings, but found her motions ignored. Her attempts to scold others met with quiet resistance. The garage incident had stripped away her aura of authority. Meanwhile, Marcus found himself more warmly embraced by neighbors who previously kept their distance. People who once whispered about Karen's behavior now openly shared laughs with Marcus about the absurdity of her SUV trapped behind his locked door. His quiet dignity in handling the matter without yelling or pettiness had won him a measure of admiration. The lasting lesson of the ordeal went beyond neighborhood politics. It became a parable of boundaries, of how entitlement can blind someone to basic respect, and how quiet strength can append years of unchecked behavior. Marcus never sought revenge or spectacle. He merely enforced the simple truth that his garage was his space, and that no title or position gave someone else the right to take it. For Karen, the humiliation lingered as a reminder that power wielded without humility often collapses under its own weight. The true story of the HOA. Karen, who parked in the black man's garage only to find herself trapped inside, rippled beyond their block. It highlighted the clash between arrogance and quiet resilience, between assumed authority and rightful ownership. And in the end, it underscored that sometimes the most effective form of justice isn't loud or dramatic, but simply closing the door, locking it, and standing firm on what is yours.